The autumn leaves danced across the pristine quad of Ashford University, one of the nation's most prestigious institutions, as Vivian Chen stepped through the wrought iron gates for the first time. Her acceptance letter had arrived 6 months earlier, and she still remembered the weight of that cream-colored envelope in her trembling hands, the way her parents had embraced her with tears streaming down their faces. "Remember why you're here," her father had said on the morning she left their modest home in Sacramento. He was a man of few words, his hands calloused from decades of managing the family restaurant, but when he spoke, his wisdom carried the weight of lived experience. Education is the door that no one can close once you've walked through it. Her mother, elegant despite the early hour and the flour still dusting her apron from preparing breakfast dumplings, had held Vivian's face between her hands. "The world will offer you many paths, my daughter. Some will glitter like gold but lead to darkness. Stay true to yourself and you will never be lost." Vivian had nodded solemnly, understanding that their advice came not just from parental concern but from something deeper, a knowing born of their own struggles as immigrants who had built a life from nothing. Now, standing in the shadow of centuries-old buildings where countless minds had been shaped, Vivian felt the full weight of their sacrifice and their dreams. She was a striking young woman, her intelligence evident in her observant dark eyes, her movements carrying a natural grace that came from years of classical piano and dance. But it was her quiet confidence, the way she carried herself with dignity and purpose, that truly set her apart. Her roommate, Jessica Park, a bubbly pre-med student from Boston, helped her unpack in their dormitory. "You're going to love it here," Jessica gushed, hanging up clothes in the cramped closet they would share. "The professors are amazing, the library is open 24 hours, and the social scene is incredible. Though fair warning, everyone here is overachieving and slightly neurotic." Vivian laughed, feeling some of her nervousness ease. "Sounds like my kind of place." "What's your major?" Jessica asked, tossing a decorative pillow onto Vivian's bed. "Biochemistry with a focus on pharmaceutical research," Vivian replied. "I want to develop treatments for diseases that affect underserved communities. My grandmother died of an illness that would have been treatable with better access to care." Jessica paused, her expression softening. "That's really beautiful, Vivian. And incredibly ambitious." Over the next few weeks, Vivian immersed herself in her studies with a fervor that impressed even the most dedicated students. While others struggled to balance academics with the intoxicating freedom of campus life, Vivian maintained a disciplined routine: morning runs, classes, library sessions, and evening practice at the music hall where she continued her piano studies. She made friends easily enough. Her warmth and genuine interest in others drew people to her, but she maintained boundaries. When classmates invited her to fraternity parties, she politely declined. When study groups stretched late into the night and migrated to bars, she excused herself. Her parents' words echoed in her mind. Distractions were everywhere, but her purpose was singular. "You're missing out," groaned Marcus Chin, a fellow biochemistry major, no relation despite sharing a surname. They were working together on a particularly challenging organic chemistry problem set in the library. "Life isn't just about books, Vivian. You're at one of the best universities in the country. Enjoy it." "I am enjoying it," Vivian replied with a smile, highlighting a passage in her textbook. "I enjoy learning. I enjoy working toward something meaningful. That's not martyrdom, Marcus, it's choice." He shook his head with affection. "You're either going to be the most successful person in our class or you're going to burn out spectacularly. I'm betting on the former." What Marcus and others couldn't see was that Vivian's dedication wasn't joyless discipline but genuine passion. She loved the puzzle of molecular structures, the elegance of chemical reactions, the promise of discovery. Each lecture opened new doors in her mind, each lab report brought her closer to understanding the mechanisms of life itself. But as the semester progressed, Vivian began to notice something unsettling. In her advanced molecular biology course, taught by Dr. Richard Thornton, she felt the weight of his attention in a way that made her skin prickle with discomfort. Dr. Thornton was in his early 50s, his reputation formidable in the field of cellular biology. Papers bearing his name appeared regularly in prestigious journals, and he served on review boards for major research grants. He had the kind of academic power that could make or break a young scientist's career. He was also, Vivian realized with growing unease, watching her far too closely. The first time Dr. Thornton called on Vivian in class, she had been confident in her answer. She'd done the reading, not just the assigned chapters but the supplementary materials and several of the cited research papers. When he asked about the implications of a recent study on protein folding, her hand had shot up. "Miss Chin?" His voice carried across the lecture hall. The study suggests that chaperone proteins play a more dynamic role than previously understood, Vivian began, her voice clear and steady. Rather than simply preventing misfolding, they appear to actively guide the folding process through conformational changes triggered by ATP hydrolysis. This could have significant implications for understanding diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, where protein misfolding is a primary factor. A moment of silence followed. Then Dr. Thornton smiled, a slow, appraising smile that made Vivian's stomach tighten. "Excellent, Miss Chen. It seems we have a genuine scholar among us." His gaze lingered a beat too long before he turned back to the board. After class, as students filed out, Dr. Thornton called out, "Miss Chen, a moment please." Vivian approached his desk, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Up close, she could see the silver threading through his dark hair, the expensive cut of his suit. He radiated authority and accomplishment. "Your answer today was impressive," he said, leaning against his desk in a casual pose that somehow felt calculated. "Most students barely skim the assigned reading, let alone explore the primary sources. Where did you do your undergraduate work?" "This is my first semester here, Dr. Thornton. I'm a freshman." His eyebrows rose. "A freshman? In an advanced molecular biology course." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, that makes your performance even more remarkable. You have real potential, Miss Chen. I'd like to discuss the possibility of you joining my research lab. Freshmen rarely get such opportunities, but for exceptional students, exceptions can be made." Pride warmed Vivian's chest. This was exactly the kind of opportunity that could set her on the path toward her goals. "I'd be very interested, Dr. Thornton. Thank you for considering me. Of course. Why don't we schedule a meeting to discuss it further? Perhaps over coffee?" He pulled out his phone. "Does Saturday work for you? There's an excellent cafe off campus where we could talk more privately." Something in the way he said privately sent a warning signal through Vivian's mind. She thought of her parents' advice, of the boundaries she had set for herself. "I appreciate the offer, Dr. Thornton, but I keep my weekends for studying and family calls. Perhaps we could meet during your office hours instead." A flicker of something, annoyance? Disappointment? Crossed his features before his professional smile returned. "Of course. Office hours it is. I'll have my assistant send you the details." Vivian left feeling unsettled, though she couldn't quite articulate why. She pushed the feeling aside, throwing herself into her studies with renewed vigor. She aced the first exam in Dr. Thornton's class, a perfect score that placed her at the top of the curve. But as October turned to November, Dr. Thornton's attention intensified. He began finding reasons to keep her after class, to single her out during lectures, to email her articles she might find interesting late at night. His comments, while ostensibly professional, carried an undercurrent that made her increasingly uncomfortable. "You're being weird about this," Jessica said one evening when Vivian expressed her concerns. "He's a professor giving attention to a promising student. That's literally his job." "I know," Vivian said, staring at her laptop screen where yet another late-night email from Dr. Thornton awaited. "But it feels different. The way he looks at me, the way he stands too close, the way he always finds reasons for us to be alone." "Has he done anything inappropriate? Said anything explicitly out of line?" Vivian hesitated. "No, not exactly. It's just a feeling." "Then maybe you're overthinking it," Jessica said gently. "You're beautiful, Vivian, and smart. You're probably not used to professors being impressed by you because you came from a smaller school. This is normal at elite universities. Professors mentor promising students." Vivian wanted to believe her, but the feeling persisted. She began avoiding Dr. Thornton when possible, arriving to class just as it started and leaving immediately after, claiming other commitments. She stopped responding to his non-essential emails. Other students noticed her success, and not all reactions were positive. In the competitive pressure cooker of Ashford, some classmates grew resentful of her perfect scores and Dr. Thornton's obvious favor. Even as that favor made Vivian increasingly uncomfortable. One afternoon in late November, Vivian overheard a conversation in the hallway outside the lecture hall. "She thinks she's so special," a voice sneered. Brittany Caldwell, a senior who'd been pursuing graduate research positions with Dr. Thornton. "Playing innocent and coy, but you know she's working every angle." "Thornton's definitely interested," another voice added. "Did you see how he looked at her last week? Pretty soon she'll probably be his research assistant." Air quotes evident in the mocking tone. "If she's smart, she'll take the opportunity," a male voice chimed in. "That's how the game works. Thornton can make or break careers in this field. Vivian's face burned as she pressed herself against the wall, waiting for them to leave. When she finally entered the lecture hall, she held her head high, refusing to let their words show their effect. But inside, anger and hurt warred with each other. She had worked harder than anyone, had earned her grades through genuine effort and ability, and yet people assumed the worst. After class that day, Dr. Thornton asked her to stay again. This time Vivian felt a spike of real fear. "Miss Chen, I've noticed you've been distant lately," he began, his tone almost hurt. "Have I done something to offend you?" "Not at all, Dr. Thornton," Vivian replied, keeping her voice neutral and professional. "I've simply been very busy with all my courses." "I see." He moved closer and Vivian instinctively stepped back. He noticed and his expression hardened slightly. "I had hoped we could develop a mentoring relationship. I don't offer such opportunities lightly, Miss Chen. In fact, I've already turned away several graduate students because I thought you might benefit from one-on-one guidance." "I truly appreciate your interest, Dr. Thornton," Vivian said carefully, "but I don't think I'm ready for independent research yet. I have a lot to learn from my coursework first." "Don't be modest," he said, his voice taking on an edge. "You're one of the most talented students I've taught in years. But talent without guidance can go to waste. And in this field, connections matter almost as much as ability. I'd hate to see you miss out on opportunities because of stubbornness." The implied threat hung in the air between them. Vivian felt her heart racing but kept her expression calm. "I'll keep that in mind, Dr. Thornton. Thank you for your concern." She moved toward the door. "Vivian." The use of her first name, which he'd avoided until now, stopped her. "I'm hosting a small dinner party next weekend for some visiting researchers from MIT and Stanford. Important people in pharmaceutical research. Your stated field of interest. I think you'd find it valuable to attend." Every instinct screamed at her to decline, but she also recognized the career implications. These were exactly the kind of connections her parents had urged her to build, legitimate, professional networking opportunities. "Will other students be attending?" she asked. Pause. "It's primarily for graduate students and postdocs. But I'm making an exception for you. I appreciate the invitation, Dr. Thornton, but I don't think it would be appropriate for me to attend as the only undergraduate. Perhaps when I'm further along in my studies." His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake, Miss Chen. In academia, opportunity doesn't knock twice." "I understand. Have a good evening, Dr. Thornton." Vivian walked out, her legs trembling but her head held high. She called her parents that night, her first instinct in times of uncertainty. "Something doesn't feel right, Mama," she said in Mandarin, the language they always used for important conversations. "He says it's mentorship, but it feels like something else." Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Trust your instincts, daughter. A teacher who truly cares about your education will respect your boundaries. One who becomes angry when you set boundaries, that is someone who wants something else." "But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm throwing away real opportunities because I'm being paranoid?" "Better to be cautious and safe than trusting and harmed," her father interjected on the other line. "Your education is important, but your dignity and safety are more important. There will be other opportunities, other mentors. Stay on your path, Vivian. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself." Vivian hung up feeling reassured but also afraid. She had worked so hard to get here, had sacrificed so much. The thought that her success might be threatened not by her own limitations but by someone else's misconduct filled her with a fury she'd rarely felt. She would stay her course, she decided. She would work harder, score higher, prove that her success was hers alone. And she would document everything just in case. It was a decision that would soon prove critical. December arrived with biting cold and mounting academic pressure. Finals loomed, and students across campus descended into varying degrees of controlled panic. For Vivian, this was when she truly thrived. The structured challenge of comprehensive exams, the satisfaction of synthesizing months of learning into coherent answers. Dr. Thornton's molecular biology course was notoriously difficult, with a cumulative final that covered everything from basic cellular mechanisms to cutting-edge research applications. Vivian had been preparing for weeks, creating detailed study guides, forming practice problems, and meeting with her study group to review complex concepts. She felt confident walking into the exam. The 3-hour test was challenging but fair, covering material they'd studied throughout the semester. Vivian worked methodically through each section. Multiple choice, short answer, and finally 2 comprehensive essay questions that asked students to analyze recent research papers and propose experimental approaches to specific problems. For the final essay, which asked about potential therapeutic approaches to protein misfolding diseases, Vivian drew on everything she'd learned, not just from the course but from the additional reading she'd done on her own. She outlined a multi-pronged strategy involving chaperone protein enhancement, small molecule inhibitors, and gene therapy approaches, citing specific studies and explaining the rationale behind each approach. She left the exam exhausted but satisfied, confident that she had demonstrated her mastery of the material. The week before Christmas break, when grades were posted, Vivian's heart sank. Advanced Molecular Biology. F. She stared at her laptop screen in disbelief, refreshing the page multiple times as if the grade might change. Every other class showed the as she'd expected. Organic Chemistry A, Calculus A, Introduction to Research Methods A. But that single F stood out like a bloodstain on an otherwise perfect record. It had to be a mistake. A clerical error. She immediately emailed Dr. Thornton, requesting a meeting to review her exam. His response came within minutes. My office. 4 p.m. today. Vivian arrived 5 minutes early, her printed exam materials and study notes in hand. Dr. Thornton's office was an impressive space lined with books and framed accolades, his desk dominated by stacks of papers and research journals. Miss Chen, he said without looking up from the paper he was reading. Close the door, please. She did, though every instinct told her to leave it open. But this was about her grade, her academic record. She needed answers. There must be some mistake, Vivian began, pulling out her documented exam preparation materials. I studied extensively, I know I performed well on the exam. An F doesn't make sense given my performance all semester. Dr. Thornton finally looked up, his expression unreadable. There's no mistake. Your final exam was profoundly disappointing. Particularly your essay responses, which showed a fundamental misunderstanding of the concepts we covered. That's not possible. Dr. Thornton, I can walk you through my reasoning on every question. Your reasoning was flawed, he interrupted coldly. The gaps in your understanding became apparent under the pressure of comprehensive evaluation. I'm afraid your earlier performance may have been inflated by external assistance. The accusation struck her like a physical blow. Are you suggesting I cheated? I'm saying that when students consistently perform above their actual ability level, it raises questions. The final exam, taken under controlled conditions, revealed your true capacity. Vivian felt tears of frustration and anger pricking her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This is completely unjust. I earned every grade in this class through my own work. I want to appeal this decision. You're welcome to try, Dr. Thornton said, his voice taking on a softer, almost sympathetic tone. But I should warn you that appeals rarely succeed. The word of a decorated professor against a first-semester freshman. He spread his hands. And more importantly, this grade will appear on your transcript immediately. A failing grade in a core course will affect your GPA, your eligibility for scholarships, your chances at research positions. He let the words hang in the air, watching her face. Vivian felt sick, understanding now that this was deliberate. This was retaliation. However, Dr. Thornton continued, standing and walking around his desk to lean against it, closer to where she sat, I'm not an unreasonable man. I believe in second chances in helping students who show flexibility. Flexibility? Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. You're a beautiful, intelligent young woman, Vivian. You've been playing hard to get all semester, and while I respect your initial hesitation, it's time to be realistic about how the world works. He moved closer still, and Vivian felt trapped in her chair. I can change your grade. I can make all of this go away. I can open doors for you that most students only dream of. All I'm asking is for you to be friendly, adult, understanding of how professional relationships develop. The room felt airless. Vivian's mind raced, understanding perfectly what he was suggesting but unable to fully believe it was happening. You're asking me to. She couldn't finish the sentence. I'm offering you an opportunity to salvage your academic career, he said smoothly. A dinner. A conversation. A chance to get to know each other outside the constraints of the classroom. Who knows what might develop naturally from there. His hand reached out as if to touch her face. Vivian stood so quickly her chair scraped backward. No. No. His expression hardened. Do you understand what you're refusing? I could change this grade right now. Or I can let it stand, and you can explain to your parents why you failed, why you might lose your scholarship, why your dreams of pharmaceutical research are over before they've even begun. I'll appeal. I'll go to the dean. Oh. You'll what? Make accusations you can't prove? I'm a tenured professor, Vivian. You're a freshman who received special attention that others might interpret uncharitably. Who do you think they'll believe? Vivian grabbed her bag, her whole body shaking. You're right that I'm a freshman, Dr. Thornton. I'm young and maybe naive. But I'm not desperate enough to compromise myself for a grade. I earned that grade fairly and I will prove it. She walked to the door, but his voice stopped her one more time. Think carefully before you make this into something bigger, Miss Chen. Academic misconduct allegations can be career-ending. And I have documentation that will support my assessment of your performance. He smiled, a cold, calculated expression. You have until the end of break to reconsider. My offer remains open. Vivian fled his office, barely making it to the bathroom before she broke down, her entire body trembling with rage and fear and disgust. She had heard of situations like this, had been warned by her mother and by other women that such men existed. But experiencing it herself, having her hard work and integrity weaponized against her, was devastating in ways she hadn't anticipated. She called her parents that night and told them everything. The Christmas break that should have been a time of celebration and rest became a strategy session. Vivian's father, despite his limited formal education, had a keen understanding of systems and power dynamics honed by years of navigating business regulations and bureaucracies. Her mother, with her quiet strength and practical wisdom, helped Vivian document everything while keeping her daughter's spirits from breaking. Predators rely on silence, her father said, his voice tight with controlled anger. They assume their victims will be too ashamed or afraid to speak. You will not be silent, but you will be smart. We will build a case so strong that they cannot ignore it. They started with Vivian's academic record. Her high school transcripts showed consistent excellence in sciences. Her SAT scores, her AP exam results, her recommendation letters, everything painted a picture of a dedicated, high-achieving student. Her first semester grades in every other class confirmed this pattern. The data doesn't lie, Vivian's father said, spreading the documents across their dining room table. One professor says you don't understand the material. Every other professor says you're exceptional. Which story makes more sense? Next, Vivian compiled her exam preparation materials, the detailed study guide she'd created, her practice problems with solutions, her annotated lecture notes. She retrieved every email exchange with Dr. Thornton, noting the progression from professional to personal, the late-night messages, the invitations that went beyond normal academic mentoring. Her mother suggested she reach out to other students. If he did this to you, he may have done it to others. Or they may have noticed his behavior. Vivian spent several days carefully contacting classmates, ostensibly to discuss the exam and grades. What she discovered was illuminating. Several students mentioned feeling uncomfortable around Dr. Thornton. 2 female graduate students, when pressed gently, admitted to having weird encounters with him but refused to go into detail, fear evident in their voices. Most devastatingly, Vivian connected with a former student, Amanda Rodriguez, who had graduated 2 years earlier. Amanda had been willing to meet for coffee, and her story chilled Vivian to the bone. He did the same thing to me, Amanda said quietly, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup as if seeking warmth. Failed me in his course even though I'd been getting A's all semester. Propositioned me. When I refused, he submitted an academic misconduct report claiming I'd plagiarized a paper. I fought it for months, but eventually I just gave up. Transferred to another school. It was easier than continuing to fight. Why didn't you report him? Vivian asked, though she already knew the answer. I did. The university investigated. He provided evidence of my poor performance, papers and exams I'd never seen before with my name on them. He had documentation of concerns he'd supposedly raised throughout the semester. The investigation concluded that while his conduct may have been overly familiar, there was no evidence of quid pro quo sexual harassment, and the academic judgment was his prerogative. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. He destroyed my academic record and my reputation, and he got away with it. Not this time, Vivian said with conviction she didn't entirely feel. I'm not giving up and I'm not staying quiet. Armed with this information, Vivian's family consulted with a lawyer, a family friend who specialized in education law. Attorney Jennifer Liu reviewed all of Vivian's documentation with a critical eye. You have a strong case for grade appeal based on your documented preparation and performance in other courses, she said. The harassment allegations are more complex because he's been careful to avoid explicit language. But the pattern is clear, especially with Amanda's testimony. The question is whether the university will take it seriously. What's the best approach? Vivian's father asked. File the grade appeal through official channels. Document everything. Request to see your actual exam and any grading rubric. Force him to justify his evaluation in writing. Meanwhile, I'll send a letter to the university on Vivian's behalf raising concerns about Dr. Thornton's conduct. Not an accusation yet, just raising concerns and requesting that her appeal be handled by an independent reviewer, not someone in his department. And if they don't listen? Vivian's mother asked. Attorney Lu's expression was serious. Then we escalate. Title IX complaint, potentially involving the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. Maybe even law enforcement if the pattern of behavior suggests criminal misconduct. But that's a last resort. These processes are lengthy, expensive, and emotionally draining. I don't care, Vivian said firmly. He's doing this to other students. He'll keep doing it unless someone stops him. The grade appeal was filed on January 3rd, the first day back from break. Vivian requested copies of her exam, the grading rubric, and written justification for her failing grade. She also requested that her appeal be reviewed by a neutral faculty committee, not by anyone in Dr. Thornton's department. Dr. Thornton's response came quickly, too quickly Vivian thought. He provided a copy of an exam with her name on it, marked extensively with red pen. Comments like fundamental misunderstanding, completely wrong approach, and poor grasp of basic concepts covered the pages. But when Vivian reviewed the exam, her blood ran cold. It wasn't her exam. The handwriting was similar, not identical but close enough to potentially pass a casual inspection. But Vivian recognized none of the answers. The essay on protein misfolding, which she remembered writing in meticulous detail, was replaced by a rambling, unfocused response that demonstrated exactly the kind of poor understanding Dr. Thornton claimed she had. He forged it, she said to her parents, her voice shaking. He actually forged a fake exam and submitted it as mine. Her father examined the document carefully. The handwriting is similar but not exact. Look here, you make your capital P, with a loop at the top. This one is just a straight line. And your G has a distinctive curl. These don't match. They documented every discrepancy. Vivian wrote out sample answers to the exam questions from memory, showing her actual understanding of the material. She provided samples of her handwriting from other courses. Attorney Lu had a forensic document examiner review both exams. The examiner's report was unequivocal. High probability that the submitted exam was not written by the same person who produced the handwriting samples from other courses. Multiple consistent differences in letter formation, spacing, and baseline characteristics. He's not just harassing her, Attorney Lu said grimly. He's fabricating evidence. That's potentially criminal fraud. The university's grade appeal committee scheduled a hearing for late January. In the meantime, Vivian returned to campus for the spring semester, her stomach churning with anxiety but her resolve firm. She was not alone. Word had spread about her appeal, and to her surprise, several students reached out in support. Some shared their own uncomfortable experiences with Dr. Thornton. Others simply expressed admiration for her courage in standing up to a powerful professor. You're either very brave or very stupid, Marcus told her as they studied together in the library. But I'm betting on brave. What can I do to help? Just keep being my friend, Vivian said. And maybe be ready to testify about my study habits and understanding of the material if needed? Absolutely. You're the best student in our year, Vivian. Everyone knows that. If Thornton says otherwise, he's either incompetent or lying. As the hearing date approached, Vivian felt the weight of everyone's expectations. Her parents' hopes, Amanda's vindication, the silent support of other students who had suffered but never spoken. She was no longer fighting just for herself. She was fighting for everyone Dr. Thornton had ever harmed and everyone he might harm in the future. The night before the hearing, unable to sleep, Vivian sat at her desk and wrote in her journal, I came to this university to learn, to grow, to build a future. I didn't come to be someone's victim. Tomorrow I stand up not just for my grade but for my dignity, my truth, and my right to pursue my education without harassment or manipulation. Whatever happens, I will know I didn't stay silent. I will know I fought. She read her parents' email one more time before trying to sleep. We are so proud of you, daughter. Not because of your grades or your achievements, but because of your integrity and your courage. Remember, you are not the one who should feel shame. Stand tall tomorrow. Tell your truth. We will stand with you no matter what. The hearing would determine more than just a grade. It would determine whether justice was possible within a system that too often protected the powerful over the vulnerable. And Vivian Chen, the freshman who had come to university with dreams of changing the world through science, was about to learn that sometimes the most important battles happen long before you reach the laboratory. The conference room on the third floor of Whitmore Hall felt too small and too large simultaneously. Vivian sat at the polished wooden table, her hands folded calmly in her lap though her heart raced. Beside her sat Attorney Liu, a stack of organized evidence before them. Across the table, Dr. Thornton lounged with studied casualness, flanked by a university attorney whose expression revealed nothing. The appeal committee consisted of 3 faculty members: Dr. Patricia Morrison from the History Department, Chair, Dr. James Chen from Physics, and Professor Sarah Williams from English Literature. They had been selected specifically because none had direct ties to Dr. Thornton's department, a small victory Vivian's attorney had secured. Dr. Morrison called the hearing to order at 9 a.m. sharp. This is a formal grade appeal hearing for Ms. Vivian Chen regarding the grade of F she received in advanced molecular biology, taught by Dr. Richard Thornton. Ms. Chen, you have the floor to present your case. Vivian took a deep breath and began. Her voice was steady, clear, and precisely factual. Thank you. I'm appealing this grade because it does not reflect my performance in the course. Throughout the semester, I earned an A average on all exams and assignments. I attended every lecture, participated actively, and completed all work on time. Dr. Thornton himself acknowledged my strong performance multiple times. She slid the first set of documents across the table, her semester grades on individual assignments, each marked with high scores and positive comments. As you can see, there was no indication throughout the semester that my understanding was deficient. Dr. Thornton shifted in his seat but said nothing, his expression bland. I prepared extensively for the final exam, Vivian continued, presenting her detailed study guides, practice problems, and notes. I met with study groups, reviewed all materials, and felt confident in my understanding of the content. When I received a failing grade on the final, I was shocked and immediately requested to review my exam. She paused, making eye contact with each committee member. What Dr. Thornton provided was not my exam. A stir went through the room. The university attorney's eyebrows rose slightly. Dr. Thornton's expression darkened. That's a serious accusation, Ms. Chen, Dr. Morrison said carefully. Attorney Liu spoke up. We have expert analysis to support this claim. She presented the forensic document examiner's report, along with side-by-side comparisons of Vivian's handwriting from multiple sources and the submitted exam. Dr. James Chen leaned forward, studying the documents with keen interest. As a physicist, he appreciated concrete evidence. The differences are quite apparent, he murmured. The letter formations, the spacing, these are not consistent. Handwriting can vary under stress, the university attorney interjected. Exam conditions are different from regular note-taking. True, Attorney Liu acknowledged. Which is why we also examined content. Ms. Chen, would you please explain your actual approach to the essay question about protein misfolding diseases? Vivian explained in detail, her deep understanding of the topic evident in every word. She outlined the multi-pronged therapeutic strategy she had proposed, cited specific studies, and explained the scientific rationale behind each approach. The committee members, even those from non-science fields, could recognize the sophistication of her knowledge. And this, Attorney Liu said, sliding the submitted exam across the table, is what Dr. Thornton claims Ms. Chen wrote. As you can see, the response is vague, poorly organized, and demonstrates fundamental misunderstandings of basic concepts. It's inconsistent with Ms. Chen's demonstrated knowledge and with her performance in all her other courses. She presented Vivian's transcript from other classes, organic chemistry, calculus, research methods, all as letters from other professors describing her as exceptional, dedicated, and one of the strongest students in the program. Dr. Thornton, Dr. Morrison said, you've had a chance to review this evidence. What is your response? Dr. Thornton leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of authority and wounded dignity. With all respect to the committee, this is precisely the kind of challenge to academic authority that undermines our educational system. I have been teaching for over 20 years. I am an expert in my field. When I assess a student's performance, I do so based on rigorous standards and comprehensive evaluation. He gestured dismissively at Vivian's evidence. Ms. Chen was indeed a strong student for most of the semester, which makes her collapse on the final exam particularly telling. In my experience, this pattern often indicates that a student's earlier work was not entirely their own, that they benefited from inappropriate assistance or collaboration. Are you accusing Ms. Chen of academic dishonesty? Professor Williams asked sharply. I'm saying that the comprehensive final, taken under controlled conditions without the possibility of outside help, revealed her true understanding or lack thereof. As for the handwriting analysis, I find it suspect that Ms. Chen would go to such lengths and expense unless she had something to hide. Perhaps the stress of the exam did indeed affect her handwriting. Or perhaps she's now attempting to disown her own poor performance. That's a lie, Vivian said quietly, her composure finally cracking. You know that's a lie. Dr. Thornton's eyes flashed with anger. Miss Chen, I understand you're disappointed, but making wild accusations. They're not wild, Vivian interrupted, her voice growing stronger. You propositioned me. When I refused, you retaliated by failing me and fabricating evidence. The room went completely silent. The university attorney sat up straighter. Dr. Morrison exchanged glances with her fellow committee members. Miss Chen, that's an extremely serious allegation. Do you have evidence to support it? Attorney Liu stepped in smoothly. We do. We have a pattern of increasingly inappropriate communications from Dr. Thornton to Miss Chen throughout the semester. She presented printouts of emails highlighting the late-night messages, the personal invitations, the shift from professional to familiar language. I send many emails to students, Dr. Thornton said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. I try to be available and supportive. At 11 p.m. on a Saturday, inviting a freshman to off-campus coffee meetings? Professor Williams asked, her tone skeptical. That seems unusual. And this, Attorney Liu continued, is a recording of the meeting in which Dr. Thornton explicitly offered to change Ms. Chen's grade in exchange for personal favors. The room erupted. Dr. Thornton shot to his feet. That's illegal. You can't record someone without their consent. In this state, Attorney Liu said calmly, only one party needs to consent to record a conversation. Ms. Chen consented to her own recording. And the content speaks for itself. She played the audio. Dr. Thornton's voice filled the room, unmistakable in its implications. I can change your grade. I can make all of this go away. All I'm asking is for you to be friendly. Adult. Understanding of how professional relationships develop. When it finished, the silence was deafening. Dr. Thornton's face had gone pale, then red. That's taken out of context. I was simply offering mentorship. You offered to change her grade in exchange for a dinner date, Dr. Morrison said, her voice cold. After failing her on an exam that forensic analysis suggests she didn't actually write. Dr. Thornton, I think we need to expand the scope of this hearing. But Attorney Liu wasn't finished. There's more. We have testimony from Amanda Rodriguez, a former student who experienced an identical pattern of behavior from Dr. Thornton 3 years ago. She presented Amanda's written statement and supporting documentation. And, she added, in the past week 2 more women have come forward, 1 current graduate student and 1 former postdoc, with similar experiences. They were afraid to speak before, but Ms. Chen's courage gave them courage. The university attorney was now whispering urgently to Dr. Thornton, who shook his head repeatedly, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. This hearing is about my grade, Vivian said, finding her voice again. But it's also about something bigger. Dr. Thornton has been using his power to coerce and punish students for years. He's forged evidence to cover his tracks. He's destroyed academic careers and damaged lives because he thought no one would believe us because the system protected him. She stood, looking directly at the committee members. I came to this university to learn. I worked harder than I've ever worked in my life. I earned every grade fairly. And when I refused to compromise my integrity, Dr. Thornton tried to destroy my academic future. If you allow this to stand, you're telling every student on this campus that power matters more than truth, that professors can abuse their positions without consequences, that victims should stay silent or face retaliation. Her voice rang with conviction. I won't stay silent. And I won't let him do this to anyone else. Dr. Morrison looked shaken but composed. Dr. Thornton, do you have anything to add? He stood slowly, his expression now one of barely contained rage. This is a coordinated attack on my reputation and career by a student who received a failing grade she earned. I stand by my academic assessment. As for these other allegations, they're hearsay and character assassination. I've dedicated my life to education and research. I will not be brought down by false accusations from disgruntled students. We'll need to review all this evidence carefully, Dr. Morrison said. This hearing is adjourned while the committee deliberates. We'll reconvene with our decision tomorrow morning. As the room cleared, Dr. Thornton pushed past Vivian without a word, but she felt his venomous glare. She was trembling now that the adrenaline was fading, but she had done it. She had spoken her truth. Attorney Liu put a hand on her shoulder. You were remarkable in there. Whatever happens next, you should be proud. What do you think they'll decide? Vivian asked. About your grade? I think it's clear you'll win that appeal. The evidence is overwhelming. About Thornton. She paused. That depends on how much the university values its reputation versus protecting its faculty. But you've made it impossible for them to ignore this. That night, Vivian called her parents, exhausted but unburdened. I told them everything, Mama. I didn't hold back. Good, her mother said fiercely. The truth is the truth no matter who denies it. We're so proud of you, daughter. Her father added, you stood up for yourself and for others. That takes more courage than any exam. Whatever tomorrow brings, you have already won the most important battle. But Vivian couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Amanda, about the graduate student who was still too afraid to speak publicly, about all the students who had suffered in silence. She thought about the system that had allowed Dr. Thornton to operate unchecked for years, the culture that made victims question themselves, the power dynamics that made speaking up feel impossible. She had spoken up. But would it be enough? The committee's decision came at 10 a.m. the next morning. Vivian sat in the same conference room, this time with her parents present. They had flown in overnight, unwilling to let their daughter face this moment alone. Her father's hand gripped hers under the table. Her mother sat straight-backed and dignified, but Vivian could see the tension in her jaw. Dr. Morrison's expression was grave as she began. This committee has reviewed all evidence presented, including the forensic analysis of the exam document, Ms. Chen's academic record, the audio recording of her meeting with Dr. Thornton, and testimony from multiple sources. We have also consulted with the university's Title IX office and legal counsel. She paused, looking directly at Vivian. First, regarding the grade appeal, we find overwhelmingly in your favor. The evidence clearly demonstrates that the exam submitted by Dr. Thornton was not written by you. Your grade in advanced molecular biology is being changed to an A, retroactive to last semester. Your GPA will be corrected accordingly, and all academic penalties are removed. Vivian felt her mother's hand find her other hand, squeezing tightly. Relief washed over her, but she remained focused on Dr. Morrison's words. Second, regarding the allegations of academic misconduct by Dr. Thornton, we find sufficient evidence to warrant immediate investigation by the university. Dr. Thornton has been placed on administrative leave pending a full inquiry. The Title IX office will be conducting interviews with all parties involved. The university takes these allegations extremely seriously. She continued, her voice weighted with significance. Third, and most importantly, we owe you an apology, Ms. Chen. The fact that Dr. Thornton was able to engage in this pattern of behavior for years without intervention represents a failure of our institutional systems. You should never have been put in this position. No student should ever face retaliation for refusing inappropriate advances or have their academic integrity compromised by faculty misconduct. Dr. James Chin spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. I want to add, Ms. Chin, that your courage in coming forward has likely prevented this from happening to countless other students. You stood up not just for yourself but for everyone who comes after you. That matters more than any grade. Professor Williams nodded emphatically. The documentation you provided, the thoroughness of your preparation, your willingness to endure this process. These things speak to your character and your commitment to truth. This university is better for having you as a student. After the formal hearing concluded, the university attorney approached Vivian's family. Ms. Chin, the university would like to discuss a resolution that acknowledges the harm you've suffered. We'd like to cover your legal expenses, provide counseling services if desired, and work with you on any other measures that would help make this right. What about Dr. Thornton? Vivian asked. What happens to him? The investigation will take several weeks, but given the evidence already presented, including the forged exam and the audio recording, it's likely he'll face termination. We're also obligated to report potential criminal conduct to law enforcement. Document forgery and academic fraud are serious matters. And the other women who came forward? They'll be part of the investigation. The university is committed to supporting all victims and ensuring this never happens again. Attorney Liu interjected smoothly. We'll need all of this in writing, of course. And we'll want to ensure that Ms. Chen faces no retaliation and that her academic career can continue without disruption. Of course. We'll have everything formalized within the week. As they left the building, Vivian felt her legs go weak. Her father caught her arm, steadying her. It's over, little one. You did it. It's not over, Vivian said quietly. It's just beginning. She was right. Over the next few weeks, the story spread through campus like wildfire. The student newspaper ran a front-page article. Professor placed on leave following grade fraud and harassment allegations. While Vivian's name was kept confidential in official documents, word spread quickly about the freshman who had stood up to one of the university's most powerful professors and won. Reactions were mixed. Most students expressed support and admiration. A petition calling for increased protections for students reporting harassment gathered over 2,000 signatures in 3 days. The student government passed a resolution demanding transparency in the investigation and reforms to the reporting process. But there was backlash too. Some of Dr. Thornton's colleagues circulated a letter defending his academic reputation, claiming the allegations were unproven and part of a culture of false accusations. A few students, particularly those who had benefited from Dr. Thornton's mentorship, accused Vivian of destroying a good man's career over a grade dispute. One afternoon, Vivian found a note slipped under her dorm room door. Attention-seeking bitch. Hope you're happy you ruined his life. She stared at it for a long moment, then photographed it and filed it with campus security. She wouldn't be intimidated. More women came forward. What had started with Amanda's testimony grew into a pattern of misconduct spanning 15 years. 8 women in total, including a former postdoctoral researcher who described how Dr. Thornton had sabotaged her job applications after she rejected his advances, effectively ending her academic career. The local news picked up the story. Then regional outlets. Vivian declined all interview requests, wanting to focus on her education, but the coverage meant that the university couldn't quietly handle the matter internally. The pressure for accountability and systemic change intensified. 6 weeks after the hearing, Dr. Richard Thornton was formally terminated. The university announced it was hiring an independent firm to review its harassment reporting and response procedures. A new position was created. An ombudsperson specifically dedicated to handling student complaints against faculty. Amanda Rodriguez sent Vivian an email that made her cry. Thank you. Thank you for doing what I couldn't do. Because of you, my experience is now formally acknowledged. The university has apologized and offered to expunge the misconduct allegations from my record. But more than that, you gave me back something I'd lost. The knowledge that I wasn't crazy, I wasn't wrong, and it wasn't my fault. You turned my worst experience into vindication. I'm applying to graduate programs again, and this time I'm not afraid. You did that. The graduate student who had initially been too frightened to speak publicly eventually came forward with her story as well. She told Vivian over coffee, "Watching you stand up to him gave me permission to acknowledge what happened to me. I thought I was alone. I thought I had to just accept it as the cost of an academic career. You showed me I deserved better." But perhaps the most meaningful response came from unexpected quarters. One evening, Vivian received an email from a freshman in the engineering school. "You don't know me, but I wanted to thank you. Last week, a TA made a comment to me that made me uncomfortable. Before your story, I would have just ignored it, laughed it off, convinced myself I was overreacting. Instead, I reported it. The department took it seriously, spoke to the TA, and made clear that behavior was unacceptable. It was a small thing compared to what you went through, but it mattered. You changed something here. You made it safer for the rest of us." Vivian showed the email to Jessica, who had been her steadfast supporter throughout the ordeal. "This is what it was all about," Vivian said. "Not just my grade, not just justice for me, but changing what people think is acceptable, what they think they have to tolerate." "You're kind of a legend now, you know," Jessica said with a smile. "But also you're still my slightly nerdy roommate who color codes her notes and goes to bed at 10 p.m. Don't let the fame go to your head." Vivian laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Trust me, the only fame I want is for my research someday. This was necessary, but it's not who I want to be known as forever." "Who do you want to be known as?" Vivian thought about it. "Someone who cares about truth. Someone who does good work. Someone who stands up for what's right, but who also knows when to focus on her own path. I came here to become a scientist, to help people through research. That's still my goal."